You're listening to The South Stands, a Buckeye football podcast by Ohio State fans for Ohio State fans on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and SoundCloud. Welcome back to The South Stands, a Buckeye football podcast by Ohio State fans for Ohio State fans from the West Coast. I'm your host, Zach Moore. Today is Sunday, November the 22nd, and I'm very happy to be joined once again by fellow South Stands contributor, Paige Van Horn from Denver. PVH, how you feeling this morning, my friend?
Oh, I'm light and bubbly, buddy. All good.
Effervescent as
Effervescent.
All right. We are also joined by South Stands contributor Chad Plummer from Cleveland. CP, good to be with you this morning. How are you, buddy?
Oh, good. Just like Paige, I'm walking on air, man.
We are here to recap Ohio State's nail-biting 42-35 win over number 9 Indiana. But first, I want to remind our listeners about our new website, which you can visit at southstandsosu.com. You can listen to all of our podcast episodes there and check out our new blog. I'd also like to invite our listeners to head over to Apple Podcasts and rate and review us. We'd greatly appreciate your feedback there. Finally, we invite you to give us a follow on Twitter at South_stands. That's South_stands. Okay. Yesterday in Columbus, Ohio State jumped out to a 35-7 third quarter lead over number 9 Indiana, but had to hang on for dear life as Hoosier quarterback Michael Penix Jr. threw 4 second-half touchdown passes, 3 of them to senior receiver Ty Freifogel that went for 63 yards, 56 yards, and 33 yards. Penix finished with 491 yards passing, despite only completing 53% of his passes. Those 491 passing yards were the most surrendered by an Ohio State defense since 1985. Ohio State countered with 607 yards of total offense, 300 through the air by Justin Fields, who also threw 2 touchdowns, but 3 terrible, totally avoidable interceptions. One of the big stories of the game, though, was the explosion of the Buckeye running attack. 307 yards on the ground, 6.1 yards per carry. Master Teague was the bell cow for the Buckeyes in the run game. He finished with 169 yards on 26 carries and 2 touchdowns. I thought he was fantastic. Now, this was the third game in a row that Ohio State has gone over 200 yards rushing. And one of the big positives, guys, here from this game is I think we can safely say now that Ohio State has a pretty darn good rushing attack. Garrett Wilson had his 4th 100-yard receiving game in as many games. He finished with 169 yards on 7 receptions and 2 touchdown catches. Chris Olave chipped in 8 catches for 101 yards. Buckeye offense most of the day was very good. However, they did have 2 failed red zone trips in the second half, which allowed IU to hang around. Jake Seibert missed a 44-yard field goal at the end of the third quarter. And then late in the fourth quarter, with Ohio State clinging to a 7-point lead, the Buckeyes could not convert on 4th and 1 from the IU 7-yard line, giving the ball back to Michael Penix Jr. I don't know about you guys. I was sweating bullets at that point. Paige, I think you said in a text you were never worried. I was freaking out. That game was way too close for comfort. Okay, guys, what I'd like to do here to get us started, I want to get a high-level takeaway, like a big takeaway from each of you. I'm going to get us started. And then, Paige, I'm going to kick it to you.
Cool.
My big takeaway. The Ohio State coaching staff must have been listening to the South Stand podcast on Thursday because they did not respect Indiana, especially the Hoosier defense. They had 2 weeks to prepare for this game, and I don't think came into this game with a great plan, nor did they adjust their approach as they should have as the game went along. Ryan Day continued to call long developing play action pass plays against IU's go for broke everything but the kitchen sink blitzes that led to 5 sacks, 3 terrible interceptions by Fields. I think IU's pressure had a cumulative psychological effect on Fields. To me, he seemed rattled by the late stages of that game, and there was no better evidence of that than Fields missing a wide open Luke Farrell from point blank range on 4th and goal from the IU 7-yard line with 4:39 to play. I also thought Kerry Combs was not one of his greatest games so far as Ohio State's defensive coordinator. He continued to leave his defensive backs on an island with Ty Freifogel and the IU receivers all day. Ohio State gave up 4 pass plays of 50 yards or more. IU had 3 second-half touchdown drives that took less than 2 minutes. They had touchdown drives of 5 plays, 3 plays, and 2 plays. All 3 ended in long touchdown receptions by Freifogel. I'm giving the coaching staff a D- for game plan and in-game adjustments. Call it hubris, call it arrogance. It almost cost Ohio State the damn football game. That was my big takeaway. Paige, what was your big takeaway?
That's interesting. I hadn't actually thought about that, but you're right. The play calling, it wasn't so much the play calling, but maybe the scheme seemed a little bit out of whack. I mean, there was certain points of that game where they could conceivably get whatever they wanted on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of just didn't, keep hammering that. And then you're right. I mean, their blitz packages were interesting. Like multiple times there'd be like 2 linebackers in the middle and then a guy like even playing 5 yards behind him, I guess in a nickel, and they'd send all 3 of them.
It's crazy.
And it would work, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can't, High State would pick up 2 of them, but then the third guy's coming through. Fields was definitely rattled. There's no question about that. All that being said though, I was right. The concernometer on this game was 0. We were up 7-0 after 2 frickin' plays. We were up 28-7 at half, 35-7 in the third quarter.
Uh-huh.
I was never worried. I never thought we would lose this game. Not 1 minute watching the whole thing. Now, obviously, we let them back in.
Yeah.
And obviously, there are some glaring things that they need to work out in the secondary.
Right.
But the other maybe big high-level takeaway for me is I was totally wrong. Indiana's freaking good. They're very good.
Yeah.
Penix, I knew Penix was going to make plays. I just didn't think he could do it with the consistency that he did yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
That guy's very good.
Yes.
And so the other thing that I'm thinking is, are we going to face a better team than Indiana, or at least a better passing attack from here on out? And I'm including even the playoffs.
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure that Clemson is any better with the passing game than what we saw with IU. Alabama, sure. But that doesn't mean we're necessarily going to face Alabama. And our 3 remaining teams on the Big Ten schedule, and now looks like Northwestern, I mean, that might be the most prolific passing attack we see for the rest of the year, which everybody, and I'm sure we're going to beat it to a dead horse how bad our secondary is. But maybe that's the perspective that you need to look at it, that, hey, you're not going to face another team like that the rest of the way through.
Interesting. Okay. Chad, how about you?
I'm with Paige. I really wasn't concerned that we were going to, somehow find a way to lose the game. I mean, I think there would have been somebody that stepped up and made a play. I was 100% confident in that. Bottom line is, I agree with you guys about the Indiana passing game. Now, but what needs to happen, and it needs to happen today, is Kerry Combs needs to get out of this bullshit defensive scheme that they were going with. It's almost Shiano-like. And that's what happened with our defense back then before we hired Hafley. And it's too complicated of a scheme. Just go back to what Hafley was doing. Let these kids run all over the field in the back. It just, let's not complicate things, man. You've got athletes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, I'm not going to, I'm not going to, like Paige said, I know we're going to probably beat it a dead horse, and we'll go on about Hooker and, whoever else down the list, which I'm in agreement with all that stuff. But you know what? Come on, Combs. You know what? Let's simplify the defense. Okay.
Yeah. I like that. Maybe it is time to simplify the defense. I think we're probably looking at some personnel changes too. I would just be very surprised if Marcus Hooker and Marcus Williamson, those are the guys they're going to continue to lean on. Paige, though, you made a good point in last Sunday's pod, which was about all the losses Ohio State has had in the secondary since the Fiesta Bowl. And let's go through them again. We had Fuller, Okudah, and Arnett all off to the NFL. You had Jocelyn Wint and Amir Reep. Reep would have been the starting slot corner, kicked off the team. We had another player who probably would be factoring in at safety this season, in Brandon White, transferred to Rutgers. And then we lose Cam Brown in the Penn State game with the torn Achilles. It may be that there's nobody else to turn to unless you want to put it on a true freshman, somebody like a Ryan Watts in the secondary. Paige, I think you said last week the coaching staff was probably loath to do that at this point. They may still feel that way because, as you pointed out, Paige, they're not going to be facing any juggernauts in the passing game, at least until they get to the national semi, should they make it there. But what is the solution? Chad, you've mentioned maybe simplifying some things defensively. Paige, is there a solution that I'm not seeing, that we're not seeing here for the back end of that defense?
I think CP's got a good point. Definitely, there was some confusion, and maybe it is too complicated. And I do think that was part of Schiano's problem. So simplification is probably in order. But I was thinking about it today before we got on. Where are they going to go? They're not going. There's nobody left to put in there. And I'm sorry, they're not putting true freshmen in there that have had injuries. 4 games into the season with 5 games to go. So I think at the end of the day, they're going to have to roll with what they've got. And that means Hooker and Williamson, and Freifogel, one of those long touchdown passes that, he caught in the third quarter or fourth quarter, it was against Sean Wade, by the way. Yeah. Right. So we can pile on, Hooker and Williamson all day. Sean Wade had that huge pick 6, but I mean, there's nobody there. I mean, I would be very, very surprised, and maybe they can do it. I could be wrong because they're going to have a few, potentially gimme games to figure it out and maybe get, some of these other guys in there. But I just think that they know that this is the best that they have. And I think we're just going to have to accept it. Again, the other thing I come back to is, woe us poor Buckeye fans. Like, we have a flaw in a team. Okay. So we don't have first rounders in every single position on both sides of the ball. So then maybe that does come down to coaching, and coach your way out of it and mask it, because that every other opposing coach is going to try and exploit it from here on out. That's the game plan.
Yeah. Yeah. This is where you earn that. Yeah. What's Kerry Combs making? Is $1.5 million?
Yeah.
He's going to have to earn that salary. Sorry, Chad, you go ahead.
There's no way that Ryan Day is going to allow Combs to keep his defensive scheme up. There's just no way.
Yeah.
Especially, you know what I mean? Okay, Paige, I'm 100% with you. Maybe that we're going to have to ride or die with these kids unless we get, 2 to 3 more games into the season. And like Zach mentioned, yesterday on text thread, Ryan Watts, you got, Ceballos, who's coming off of an injury.
Right. Legend Cavazos. Yeah.
Yeah. Cavazos. Maybe in 3 to 4 weeks down the road, then we can implement these guys in if they're still not getting it. But that's an even more reason that he needs to simplify that defense back there. I mean, those guys were just confused. And that's a problem. You look at Sean Wade. I think he's not playing the same defense that he was with Hazley,
Yeah.
So I just don't know, man. It just doesn't make sense to me. And I can't see RD waiting much longer to say, hey, Kerry, you got another week for these kids to understand this, or you're going back to what we were doing.
There are some changes, probably, more than likely. Not that I would know. I'm not a sophisticated enough football fan to know what those adjustments are, but it seems to me scheme-wise, things could be simplified a bit. Now, Ryan Day did say in the postgame that they would be looking at all 3 elements: coaching, scheme, and personnel. Now, he did also say he didn't imagine them having to make personnel changes, but, they were going to look at the film and everything. Look, Ohio State, I'm looking at the Pro Football Focus grades for Ohio State in this game yesterday. 20 players got snaps on the defensive side of the ball. Marcus Williamson, 20th, dead last. He continues to bring up the rear. Now, he was, as of last week, of the 37 Ohio State players that have seen snaps on the defensive side of the ball this season, he ranked 37th. He's been terrible. I don't know how much more you need to see from him. The Todd Beckman rule applies to this kid, right? He's a senior. He's been collecting dust on the sidelines for the last 3 years, and now he's thrust into a starting role. Look, if it's taken you this long to see snaps in your career, you probably don't belong at Ohio State. Why not try Ryan Watts? What have you got to lose? This is a player who's consistently grading at the very, very bottom of the defensive players for Ohio State. So Ohio State's going to be facing some lesser competition over these next few weeks, and there could be opportunities for younger players to get snaps. So I think that is the biggest question for Ohio State going forward. What can the coaching staff do to fix that leaking sieve that is the back end of that defense. Paige, I want to kick this back to you. What else did you see, either positive or negative, from the defense yesterday that stood out?
The pass rush was great.
Yeah.
What was interesting is how many times Warner and even Browning were literally covering wideouts on the far end of the field.
Yeah.
Which a couple times it didn't work out. I was curious about that. And the other thing, and you're right. I don't think Hooker's here to stay.
Yeah.
But you can definitely make a case to swap out Williamson. I think the coaches see the same things we're seeing. And I kept wondering during that game, like, why is Browning covering a wide out, way out of position on the far end of the field? And,
right.
The other thing is, it's cliche, but give Indiana some credit, man. Those guys are good. And that was a hell of a scheme. And by the way, if I'm Michigan, if I'm not calling that guy to be my next coach, I mean, Jesus Christ, that guy is a hell of a coach and on both sides of the ball. They were doing stuff and they made some plays. Yeah. And credit to Indiana. I don't think they'll lose again. They're a good football team, but to answer your question specifically, I thought the defensive line played really well. The linebackers played really well.
Yeah. I want to back you up on that point. Again, looking at the defensive grades from Pro Football Focus for Ohio State in this game, Jonathan Cooper was Ohio State's top-rated defender. 93 was his grade, 93 out of 100, followed by Haskell Garrett, 90. Tommy Togiai, 84. Zach Harrison, he graded out at 81. Those are your top 4 highest grades from Pro Football Focus on the defensive side of the ball. And funny enough, who graded 5th? Shaun Wade. He was actually pretty good in coverage. Now, he gave up the long touchdown to Freifogel in the fourth quarter, but he did have the pick 6. He was otherwise pretty good in coverage. Pro Football Focus graded him at 75 in coverage. He was their top-rated defensive back in coverage yesterday.
The other thing that just popped in my mind.
Sure, yeah.
After we scored that first touchdown on the kickoff, the hit that Proctor put on that kid. Dude, they were hitting. Lord. That's the other thing. The defense was hitting.
Yeah. Well, and we also had Browning had a big hit to jar a ball loose that really should have been a fumble. I thought it was ruled kind of incomplete, but it looked like that might have been a fumble. He had a big hit. Pete Warner had a big hit that jarred a ball loose, or maybe the ball had already coming loose. I think Browning had stripped it. That was a fumble. So there were some big hits. Chad, I want to kick it to you. What else did you see from the defense yesterday?
Well, it was nice to see Mitchell get some extended playing time at linebacker yesterday. I wasn't expecting that. Were you?
I wasn't, but he did blow a pretty big coverage. I don't know if you remember that. He got matched up. Yeah.
He did, but he's getting back in and adjusting to game time situation. Mm-hmm. I think he's going to be a beast when it's all said and done.
I hope so. It's getting late for Taraja Mitchell. We're halfway through his junior year. I'm waiting for that guy to break out. Sorry, go ahead, Chad.
I think we're going to be okay. You know what? Everybody thinks the world is ending right now, and it's just I can't even I try to stay off social media as much as I possibly can these days, but I made the mistake while I was sitting here waiting on you guys to start the pod, and I'm reading some of this stuff, and I just I really want to just I think I might just. I don't know. I would bitch slap so many people if I were in front of me right now like that. It's just insane. Like you guys, it's like the comments these people are making. Like, I think they're gonna I think Dave and Holmes and everybody else on the defensive staff are gonna watch film and they're gonna get this all straightened out. The world is not ending.
All right,
but. I think we're going to be fine, man.
Okay. I like that. I tell you what I really liked from the defensive side of the ball yesterday was the play of the defensive line. Though they did not get home for a lot of sacks, there was a lot of pressure, and your top 4 players were all defensive linemen. I want to focus on Haskell Garrett and Tommy Togiai, who just continue to have a major, major impact on this Ohio State defense. You hold a Big Ten opponent to -1 yard rushing. I mean, now IU, they're not a juggernaut running the ball. We already talked about that in the preview pod. They came in, I think, 118th rushing the ball. So we knew they were not a great running team, but to hold a Big Ten opponent to negative 1 yard rushing. The other thing that was very impressive is, according to Pro Football Focus, Tommy Togiai, your nose tackle, led the team with 10 pressures on Penix. He had 8 hurries and 2 hits on Michael Penix. You're getting that much pressure up the middle from Togiai. Now, again, they didn't get home for sacks. Haskell Garrett also had 5 pressures. So from the interior of your defensive tackle and nose tackle, you get 15 pressures. I'm just blown away by how good Garrett and Togiai have been for them. And Zach Harrison also kind of quietly is having an impact, again, not getting home for sacks. He had 5 pressures as well. So the defensive line, I think, is in good hands. And of course, Jonathan Cooper, who I think is really maximizing his last year with their program. He is consistently grading out as one of Ohio State's top defenders. So very good, I thought, on the defensive line. I really enjoyed the way the front 7 played. We saw some big hits out of the linebackers, some impact plays out of the linebackers. Pete Warner had a huge sack late in the game to force an IU punt. That was a big play by Warner. I think he actually, on that, he blitzed, he destroyed the running back who had stepped up in pass protection and still was able to bring Penix down. I was very impressed by that play. Baron Browning had a couple huge hits. He forced a fumble in the red zone. So I thought a really good overall performance from the front 7 from Ohio State, and a lot to really be enthused about. You fix these issues on the back end, either through coaching or maybe personnel changes. I think you've got a pretty solid defense here. This isn't like 2018 where there was holes all over the defense. There's one specific area that needs to be addressed. There's time to do it, you would think, given the opponents they have left on the regular season schedule. I just hope we're not looking at 2013 all over again. You guys remember that season? We lose Christian Bryant in the Big Ten opener against Wisconsin that season. And that left a gaping hole in the back end of the defense that the coaching staff just could not figure out, even though they had Von Bell sitting on the bench. Granted, he was a true freshman. I just hope this coaching staff doesn't fall into that same trap where they don't address the issue when maybe there is a solution, because this feels a little bit to me like 2013 on the back end of the defense. They're otherwise very good. I mean, that 2013 defense had Ryan Shazier. It had a freshman Joey Bosa. It had Noah Spence. They had some dudes that could play in the front 7. They just couldn't quite figure things out on the back end, and ultimately it caught up to them.
I think it was Berm from Letterman Row. He actually had a pretty good observation tweet. He said, you lose Young, you lose Okudah, but maybe the guy that's the hardest to replace for this defense is actually Fuller. And in fact, it truly is Fuller, right? Like, who'd have thought that at this point of the season, coming out of losing those guys?
Oh man, I'd take him in a second. I mean, think of how many issues that would fix, just to have a steady hand back there who's always in position. I thought this was an interesting observation too. This is from the fella who covers Ohio State for Rivals. Ross Fulton is his name. Of IU's first 4 big pass plays, 3 were on Hooker chasing a crossing route, not staying deep middle, and then not having the speed to recover. The 4th was Taraja Mitchell getting a series and blowing a coverage. Mitchell, I think, was confused about, I think he thought he had safety help and he let the receiver go up the sideline for a big gain. So that, to me, that's coaching. Right? You coach those kids up. I mean, you had a guy not knowing, a reserve linebacker not understanding what defense they were in, and you have Hooker giving up that deep middle position, chasing a crossing route. Maybe they can coach him up and he can get a little bit better. So I'm going to choose to be positive about this. Last night I went to bed. I was in a foul mood.
Yo, man, I haven't seen you that furious.
Oh, God. Anyway. All right. Well, hey, let's move over to the offensive side of the ball. I want to have a look. I think there was also a lot to be enthused about, to be positive about. Paige, what did you see, either good or bad, from the Ohio State offense that stood out to you yesterday?
You know, I thought the offensive line played pretty well. I mean, I don't think they're probably going to get the credit for that, but, you know, Indiana has got some pretty elaborate schemes that they throw at you from a blitzing perspective. I think for the most part, they did a pretty good job. Mm-hmm. And again, Teague had a good game running the ball. So clearly the offensive line was doing its job up front. So I think that would, be one thing that stood out to me. There weren't any, like Miller fixed his holding problems. It was a pretty clean game from them all around. So I think the offensive line played really well. And our receivers, I mean, It kind of reminds me last year, with Chase, and like how many more platitudes can you give Wilson and Olave? And you feel like a broken record when you talk about it over and over and over again. But my God, those guys are good. They're just pretty much unstoppable, and it creates so much pressure on a defense. And then, do you set up the run with the pass or the pass with the run? How do you try and stop this offense? Fields, he had some boneheaded plays, but how many plays did he make with his feet that were just bone crushing for Indiana? The defense, him scrambling out of the pocket. One of them where that linebacker came at him at a full run, untouched. He just spins to the right or left, and he's, gone for 40 yards. It wasn't his best game, clearly, but how many plays did he make also?
He made a lot of plays.
I saw the press conference afterwards. You could tell he was kind of annoyed. He's like, yeah, I made some bad plays. Like, I'm human. Let's move on. We still won the game.
Right.
And, I think the offense all around played really well.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how Fields bounces back from this. I thought a couple of those picks that he threw he was pressing unnecessarily against an inferior opponent. Maybe he got a little too caught up in his matchup with Michael Penix Jr. And maybe he might have been thinking Heisman there on some of those plays. Chad, what did you see from the offense that stood out to you yesterday?
I thought we did some great things. Justin made some. That was probably that first interception was probably the worst throw that I've ever seen. Like, when I say ever seen him make, it's like, last season and this year is the worst throw he's ever made.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That's going to happen, man. What team, and we didn't discuss this earlier, what team goes out, as a fan, you hate to see these types of things, but what team can you remember that goes out every single week and everything is just,
peachy,
unicorns and daisies? You know what I mean? It just was a tough day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there were bright spots. He had 300 yards passing.
Yeah.
Okay. We had 300 yards rushing. Okay. Like, the world's not ending. You know what I mean? Yes, he made some mistakes. Justin will probably beat himself up last night, but I think he's the kind of kid who just etch-a-sketched it. He's going to go work. That's going to make him work harder. And I think we're going to see some better things and better decision-making in the coming weeks for him. I think this was like, hey, I am human, like Paige said.
Uh-huh.
I'm just going to watch this film and I'm going to make better decisions. And, and hopefully Ryan and Wilson and Kevin Wilson, those guys, they come up with like, hey, this doesn't look like it's working that well. Let's change this up a little bit. So,
okay.
I'm not worried.
Ohio State had a quarterback throw for 300 yards. A running back run for more than 150 yards, and a receiver catch for more than 150 yards yesterday. It's the first time in Ohio State history that ever happened. Can you believe that? That's crazy.
Have you been playing football?
Yeah. 100 some odd years. Yeah. And by the way, that was a top 20 defense they did that against. So a lot of positives. I agree with you, Chad, to take away from the offense. And I said it at the top. I don't think Ryan Day did Justin Fields any favors with the game plan. One thing I said in the preview pod on Thursday, one area to watch was how Ohio State would handle IU blitzes. I felt like there was a boon to be had in big plays for Ohio State in those situations. There was nothing installed in the game plan to help Fields get rid of the ball early in those blitzing situations. They can, as we've said, we've kind of beat it to death at this point, they continue to roll with these slow developing play action pass plays, and that played right into Indiana's hands. So I put that on Ryan Day. Some of what you saw yesterday out of Justin Fields, I think Ryan Day has to take some of the blame there for the way that he called that game, for the game plan and then the lack of in-game adjustments.
No, I think that's actually great observation. I mean, they could just run crossing patterns all day long like they usually do against Michigan, right? And just hit guys over the middle, 3 or 4 yards, take what the defense is getting or giving you and get the ball out of his hands really quickly.
Yeah.
And so just sort of replaying the game back in my head, I hadn't thought of that, but that's a very good point and observation.
And, I think there was some hubris there. I think Ohio State didn't feel like Indiana belonged on the field with them. I really believe that. I don't think there was a Greg Popovich of the San Antonio Spurs, that legendary coach. He likes to call it appropriate fear of the opponent. I don't think there was that. I think Ohio State came into that game with a plan that didn't honor what Indiana does well. And this was we're still talking about a very young head coach in Ryan Day, only in his second year as head coach. So I think there are some takeaways, some learning experiences for Day that will hopefully make him a better coach moving forward.
On that point, can we talk about going for fourth down?
Yeah. Let's do that. Let's do that. Ohio State's clinging to a 7-point lead late in the game. You're in the red zone. It's 4th and 1. He decides to go rather than kick the field goal, go up 2 scores and pretty much seal the game at that stage. They don't convert on the 4th and 1. They opt not to kick the field goal. Paige, what did you think of that?
So number one, did he not kick the field goal because the kicker's out? I don't think anyone's asked him that question.
Jake Seibert missed a field goal earlier in the game, but that was from 44 yards out. I mean, this is a chip shot. It's an extra point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I don't know, going back to your point about the game plan and some hubris, that was some hubris on his part.
Yes, it was.
And he's super aggressive, but he had some hubris even against Clemson, right? Where there was just some things where you're like, just take what's there.
Mm-hmm.
He did talk about it in the post-game presser, and he just said, hey, look, we're just going to continue to be aggressive. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's fine up to a point, but you kick that field goal, that game is essentially over. I mean, it's going to take, right? I mean, 2 scores, an onside kick. I mean, what are the odds of that happening? Number one. And then number 2, what play call was I screaming for on 4th and 1?
I don't know. What was it?
A fucking quarterback sneak. Yeah. I don't understand. Yeah, I do not understand why.
Are they trying to keep him from getting hurt or what?
It makes no sense. In the 10 years of football that's been played, that play, if you need 1 yard, works 98% of the time? You do. If you go and look at what he ran, I mean, Justin Fields actually did a pirouette, 180, turned around, 2 guys draped all over him, and the one guy peeled off a Ruckert. And so he kind of what the fuck was that?
Yeah.
Take what you can get. Why are you making this more complicated? And again, that to me just spoke of a little bit too much hubris as well.
We dodged a bullet there because you give Michael Penix. Now, granted, it was deep in their own territory, but you give Michael Penix, who was on fire. Watching Penix in the second half reminded me a little bit of, I don't know if you guys remember this, but Ohio State played NC State, Phillip Rivers, back in 2003. And the game was somewhat similar. Ohio State had kind of jumped out to a big lead early in that game, got sloppy and careless, turned the ball over in the second half of the game, and they let Phillip Rivers catch fire. And the game went into double overtime. We ended up winning the game, but I remember the helplessness sitting there watching him just carve up our secondary. And it felt that way yesterday with Penix. He caught fire. You let a good player get into a groove, and here you are handing the ball back to Penix and that passing game with plenty of time on the clock. There was 4:50 to play, plenty of time for Indiana to drive the length of the field. They were getting whatever they wanted. Credit to the Ohio State defense for stepping up there. The front 7, they really got after Penix, and the big sack there by Pete Warner, that was huge. But I don't know if I'm Ryan Day. Of course, he's not going to publicly say it. I would hope there's a little bit more reflection there on Ryan Day's part, because I thought that was not intelligent coaching. And again, to your point, that was hubris. And you're going to end up losing a game you should win. You're going to blow opportunities as a head coach if you continue to coach that way. You do have to be a situational coach.
Take the W.
Take the W. Lean on your run game, run clock. Hey, you got a unit right now who's really struggling. Okay. So help them out. Run the football, run clock. Don't give the ball right back to Indiana. And I thought, again, I'm beating a dead horse there. The way they coached this game, their game plan and the lack of in-game adjustments did not help out Justin Fields. They did not help out that struggling secondary.
Do you feel better about this team or worse about this team after that game?
I have to be honest. I feel slightly worse. You're up 35-7 at the start of the third quarter. You're up 42-21 going into the fourth quarter. Look, Ohio State now 3 games in a row. They've been outscored in the second half, and they've allowed inferior teams to kind of get back in it. Now, Rutgers was never really back in it, but Penn State kind of made it uncomfortable there when Ohio State really kind of jumped out to a commanding lead. And clearly yesterday, Indiana was able to fight back and make that very uncomfortable for Ohio State fans. This is a thing. This second half, letting your foot off the accelerator, it's a thing now. It's a thing now they have to address. And I think it can be explained by one thing primarily, which is Ohio State jumps out to a big lead. The opposing offense abandons its game plan of trying to be balanced, run the football, throw the football, and they just start chucking it. And they start taking shots downfield. And it's that's where we're most vulnerable. And I think we've seen that play out now 3 games in a row, especially against Penn State, right? They scored 3 second half touchdowns in that game, 2 against Wade, 1 against Seven Banks. And then of course, yesterday, we've already been through it with Penix Jr. So I do think it is a thing. So I'm not going to excuse away everything that we saw that was negative in that game. I think Ohio State's got some stuff they need to fix there. I can't excuse all that away, but I don't want to focus solely on that either. I think it's important that there's a lot to really love about this team and that we should really appreciate while we have it, right?
Yeah. And, the other thing that could be a factor there, I'm not saying it is or isn't, but having no fans in the stand, when you're up in every one of these games, they put these teams away, and then, it's human nature, right? They have an emotional letdown and they don't have fans in the stand to pick them up when they make a big play, like, Wade's pick 6 and the crowd goes absolutely apeshit. Yeah. I know they're pumping in sound there, but I just wonder if that could partially be, explain why they have these pretty epic sort of meltdowns in the second half.
It's a good point. Ryan Day made reference to that in the post-game interview. I think Jenny Taft, Plummer's girlfriend, Jenny Taft, interviewed Ryan Day immediately after the game. And he mentioned that specifically, not having a crowd. You got to bring your own juice. And you're right. A play like Wade's, that pick 6, gets loud, gets raucous. Then it's difficult for Michael Penix and that offense to operate, do what they want, audible. So that's a good point.
Feed off that energy, right?
Yeah.
Paige, that is such a good, that's such a valid, huge point. That is a big thing because you've got kids, like the crowd noise, everybody, so we start making some plays and then it's kind of like, okay. Yeah. Everything's kind of just flatline, and that is big when you got, when it's these third downs that they convert, they converted yesterday, there would have been that's a huge factor. I think even Irvin mentioned that yesterday. Good point, Paige.
Yeah, good point. I like that. That's a good take. And we'll see how Ohio State adapts to that going forward. But they need to figure out a way to maintain that edge, to maintain that juice coming out of the locker room at halftime, because it is a thing now that they're going to need to address. Okay, but let's have a quick look at what happened in that Wisconsin-Northwestern game. Now, all 3 of us liked Wisconsin in this game. Credit to Northwestern, man. They completely stonewalled the Wisconsin offense. They escaped with a 17-7. Well, not even really escape. They seemed to, even though it was a close game throughout, they win by 10. It really felt like Northwestern was in command of that game. Paige, wanted to get your thoughts. What did you see in that Wisconsin-Northwestern game that stood out to you?
Yeah, I was wrong about Wisconsin. And I get, 2 games and then they missed 2 games and then beating up on Michigan is just, what can you say about that? They looked like the old Wisconsin, which is weird because what little I had seen in the first 2 games, and actually I did watch a fair amount when they played Michigan. They just looked like they had superior athletes and they just looked slow yesterday. And credit, Northwestern. Heck, they're 5-0. They're in the driver's seat in the West. So, but I was very surprised. And Wisconsin really couldn't do anything. It wasn't like, they blew that game. I mean, Northwestern just flat out stopped them on defense.
Yeah.
And Wisconsin had no answers. They had no playmakers. They made Mertz look very ordinary.
Yeah.
And I was wrong about that. I definitely did not see that coming.
Yeah, they forced Mertz into 3 interceptions. Wisconsin does not have that stallion at running back that they typically have. They ran for 136 yards on 40 carries, so not very dynamic in the run game. And of course, as you've already pointed out, they don't really have any difference makers on the outside. I think their best receiver is a tight end, Ferguson, who I believe is Barry Alvarez's grandson, if I'm not mistaken. Chad, what did you see in that performance by Northwestern that stood out to you?
Who? When did we talk about Northwestern at all this year? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's just a perfect example of like last week we were all like, wow, this Wisconsin team's legit, which, was warranted.
Yeah.
They look, and then, I mean, all credit due to to Northwestern, but come on. I mean, really? To embarrass Wisconsin that sad after it's crazy. It's just, I'll tell you what, I don't know which is a worse situation. Well, obviously it's Michigan because of notoriety, but it is just a shit storm in Nebraska as much as it is in Michigan.
Well, Penn State's 0-5.
Penn State's 0-5.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. It's a weird year in the Big Ten. It's a down year to be sure.
Yeah.
To be sure, yeah. Northwestern, I appreciate what they do. They play good, hard-nosed defense. They're very smart. I think they're very good in pass defense. They know who they are. I think they got a very good quarterback in Peyton Ramsey, who transferred from Indiana. That was a nice pickup for them. Ramsey's a steady hand at quarterback, and he can make some plays here and there. He threw 2 touchdown passes yesterday. His numbers weren't spectacular, but I think he's a more than serviceable quarterback for them. And defensively, they were fantastic yesterday, really stonewalling Wisconsin. What can you say about Pat Fitzgerald and what he's been able to do consistently there? Now, they had a down year last year, but they made the Big Ten title game 2 seasons ago, played Ohio State pretty tough in that one. And I think they're in the driver's seat in the West. If you look at their remaining schedule, there's really nobody that is going to threaten Northwestern. They finish with Michigan State, Minnesota, and Illinois. I mean, just stay the course. You are in the Big Ten title game. I mean, that is very likely Ohio State's opponent in the Big Ten title game. So they look great. All right, let's move our focus over to our good friends at Michigan. A double overtime 48-42 win over Rutgers. Paige, what'd you see in that game? Or if you saw any of it?
So you had texted me and I was like, I just can't do it. I cannot watch another vomit-inducing offensive performance after coming off from Northwestern and Wisconsin to watch Michigan and Rutgers. It's like literally watching 1960s football. And by the way, you watch Northwestern will go out and lose next week to Illinois or whomever they're playing, right?
I was going to say that, Paige. That is so true. That's going to happen. You know, they're cruising on to the Big Ten championship.
Yep.
And hit a big pothole.
I turned, so it was 17-0, and I flipped on the game, and so I've now changed my mind. Where I'm clearly I want them to give Harbaugh a contract extension. I just think let's just keep this thing going. It's too good. He's not going to turn it around. Whatever. The rivalry be damned. Let's just have Michigan suck forever. And I think Harbaugh, if he gets that contract extension, that's what will happen. But, Michigan showed some fight, and, they do have some skilled players, right? I mean, that Jackson, he's quick, man. He ran that opening kickoff back for a touchdown. Mm-hmm. He's got, there's some players there. Rutgers blew it, right? I mean, that first overtime and that third down play call that Shiano had where I don't know if you watched this, but it was 3rd and 10. And instead of trying to pick up any yards in the first overtime, because the Michigan field goal kicker missed the field goal, he just ran to the middle of the field to set up a, 45-yard field goal. and they didn't get it. I thought that was a terrible play call. I didn't understand why he did that. And then, of course, you just open the door for Michigan to come back and win the game.
Yeah.
But I mean, to be life and death to beat Rutgers, I mean, what are you? And the weird part is Michigan does have some good players, and I just can't figure out what is the problem there.
Well, the story of the game has to be Cade McNamara coming in relief of Joe Milton and throwing 4 touchdown passes. He was 27 of 36 for 260 yards, 4 touchdown passes. Is Cade McNamara the answer for them at quarterback? We'll see. It was Rutgers.
Legit.
We'll see.
Jimmy
Chad
Harbaugh said it was inspiring.
Yeah, you have to.
Performance.
Michigan avoids a very embarrassing loss at Rutgers. They were only a 10-point favorite, I believe, going into it. Not much to say out of that one. We'll see if McNamara is the answer for them and can turn things around for Michigan and make this a somewhat of a respectable year for them. But I think,
I sent that text to the group. I was like, if he loses this game, is he getting fired tonight? I really think they would have had to seriously consider it, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
I would think. Well, so next week that sets up a huge clash with Penn State, 0-5 Penn State in Ann Arbor next Saturday. Michigan still has Penn State, then Maryland, then Ohio State on the schedule. That's not an easy finish for Michigan there.
And the last thing, and I know it's weird and I know it makes no difference whatsoever, but why does he have a mask over the mouthpiece on his headset? Like it just speaks to the narrative of what a freak this guy is.
He's an odd guy.
Like a buffoon. Yeah. And I'm sorry. If I'm a recruit and I'm like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
It's so strange. That is such a good word, buffoon.
He's an odd guy. He's an odd guy. I don't know. Is he on the spectrum or something? I don't know.
He might be.
Yeah. I don't know how.
He might be, man.
How do you relate to an 18-year-old kid? He's an odd guy. Sorry, go ahead, Chad.
I think the spectrum might be the exact call. I think he wakes up in his khaki pants and eats both like Fruity Pebbles.
Odd, strange days indeed.
Can we give a shout out to our boy Luke Fickell yesterday? How about that? Coming back and winning that game.
Yeah, nice.
I know it wasn't that great, but yeah, good for Cincinnati.
Good for Cincinnati. It'll be interesting. So the first playoff rankings come out later this week. Be interesting, obviously,
Tuesday,
to find out where Ohio State falls in those rankings, but also where Cincinnati falls and how the committee views a program like Cincinnati or BYU. Be interesting to see what they think of the Fighting Luke Fickells. All right, boys, we are right at an hour. I think we can wrap things up here, and let's plan to reconvene on Thursday to have a look at the Illinois game.
On Turkey Day?
Oh, sorry. Turkey Day. That's right. No, I guess we can't do that. No, I totally forgot about that. So then I guess, do we want to do like a Wednesday? When do we want to do our preview pod?
I think.
Yeah, Wednesday, man.
Wednesday?
Yeah, Wednesday.
Okay. Got it. All right. Turkey. I completely forgot it was Thanksgiving. Oh my God. It's so hard to just keep track of all the
dude. What are you thinking?
The passage of time during this weird COVID year that we're having is just very hard to keep track of. Okay. So then we will reconvene on Wednesday to have a look at the Fighting Illini. You've been listening to the South Stands, a Buckeye football podcast. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and visit our website at southstandsosu.com.